The only way to beat the system is to get out and never come back.
You can't really process a trauma or do any sort of deeper work until your basic needs are met.
If we don't deal with the underlying issues, then we're delaying the problem.
We're not about punishment, we're about trying to restore a person.
Ontario is relatively safe, but recent headlines have led to concerns brought on by offenders out on bail. Bail reform and public safety weave through the conversations for this month's episode of The Thread. We need to talk about this month's topic and what Polly has seen when it does come to bail reform and whether or not there is an increase in crime. It seems as if everywhere you turn, if you're on the transit or if you're just out and about, something seems to be occurring to make people feel unsafe. When we talk about bail reform and whether or not crime is on the rise, what does Polly see?
People are afraid because crimes are being committed that they didn't see before. But what's causing the anger is that a lot of the people committing the crimes have criminal records, previous criminal records, and they're out on bail or on parole, and then they're reoffending.
When you have the insight and understanding, generally you won't repeat that behavior. My name is Lee Chappelle, and I am the president of Canadian Prison Consulting Incorporated. My first 10 years of prison, I was one of the I'm not going to change guys. I didn't see another place in the world for me at that point. I didn't see much in the way of opportunities down the road for a guy who'd been in and out of prison, came from child welfare, who had a drug habit in my 20s, cocaine. And I really didn't see a path forward. And I didn't have that self-value or self-belief, which are keys to overcoming also. I was already at a point where I had started to feel like I was losing my sanity because I had already served probably 14, 15 years at that point. I had been out for a while. I came back into the system, and it wasn't like an old slipper the way it used to be where you could slip in and say, okay, I'm here and adjust. I had a really hard time, and I took a look at myself and I thought, okay, is this where I'm going to be for the rest of my life?
It's just wild that at 30, you'd already been inside for 14 years, 15 years.
Yeah. I had hit a point where what I have coined dirty knowledge or guilty knowledge had started taking a toll on my mental well-being. I was fortunate enough to be able to begin meeting with a psychologist on site. Through that 6 months of meeting with her, I had committed to stopping smoking marijuana. I committed to being all involvement in subculture. I committed to taking university. I began taking courses from McMaster Correspondence. At the end of that 6-month period, which I signed up for as a trial, I felt more empowered and better than I had in my entire life. Predominantly what I do is I work with people who are facing incarceration for the first time offenders. I work with the person who's facing incarceration and their families towards preparing them for what lies ahead. Beyond that, I really take a tough approach that is centered upon ownership, accountability, insight, and remorse.
I get the sense that the people that you work with, when they come to you and they're trying to figure out how to navigate the prison system, that you want to work with people who take acceptance, who acknowledge what it is that they've done.
I'm not a parole board. I don't have the power. I'm not a judge. I don't have the power to give them a lesser sentence. But when it's that genuine to me, then I understand that that's somebody I can work with, I believe, so that they never end up going back to where they are right now. We think of corrections as an entity, but it's really broken into many different fragments. So you have decision making in the federal system. You've got national headquarters, you've got regional headquarters in every region across Canada. You then have administrations of every prison, wardens, deputy wardens. You then run into management, and then you get to frontline. And most of these groups, there's not a great deal of cohesion with. And there's differences of opinion. So you've got a decision maker who's adamant that this needs to change, and then you've got somebody on the front line who gets the memo, looks at it and says they're in their glass tower, they have no idea what it's like to be here, and throws it in the garbage. This is where you end up having a breakdown within that you don't often see or the public's not aware of.
It's interesting because if you think about the concept of why people are sent to prisons, is we want to give them an opportunity to rehabilitate. Ideally, right? But if the people who are kind of in charge of that process within the prisons themselves, the correctional officers, if they don't believe in rehabilitation, and if you're inside trying to rehabilitate, it seems as if those two things are clashing.
Yes, I would agree. Now, having said that, when it comes to correctional officers, to distinguish this, there is a care, custody, control is what it's called for corrections. They are responsible for the care, custody, and control of their charges, of their inmates. Security is really not part of social work, part of programming. They're there for security reasons. Now, this becomes a nuanced, really challenged, because you've got a demographic of inmates that are subculture, deeply entrenched in subculture. I was one for when I was young.
What do you mean by the subculture?
So drug trade, gambling, still active, so that ultimately if there's a way somehow through whoever you're in with and you're hanging out with to make arrangements for something to still occur that's criminal on the street. I mean, there's active people who are not prepared and are very clear. They say, I don't want to change. I'm going out and I'm still going to do, or they may not be that open about it, but that's where they're at.
Whether you're on the inside or on the outside, a cycle of change may be needed. What path will lead to positive transformation?
Our goal is, to try to move people from victims to survivors. I'm Carly Kalish, Executive Director of Victim Services Toronto. We physically go to the scene of the crime with police, although we're completely separate from Toronto Police. We support them in the victim and survivor and crisis management. So survivors of all different crime types and sudden tragedies, once they're a victim or survivor, they inevitably have to engage with all of these bureaucracies that can be incredibly difficult. And so our job is to walk alongside survivors and make sure that we hold their hand and make sure that they're supported and have all of the services they need after the worst day of their life.
Crime is rising and people don't feel safe. From the work that you do, what types of crime are you navigating?
The scariest thing that we are just seeing a crazy influx of besides labor trafficking is gender-based violence. And this peak started during the pandemic, right? When you are literally locked in a house or an apartment or a home with your abuser. And so the majority of the work that we do, so around 70% of the clients we support, so we support around 20,000 clients a year, 70% of those are survivors of gender-based violence, so intimate partner violence being the biggest, sexual assault, human trafficking.
And from the work that you do with victims, do you get a sense that victims feel as if they are getting justice?
Because it's so individual, some yes and some no, right? Like often intimate partner violence survivors, if they do decide to report to police, and some do and some don't, their abuser comes out the same day, right? Like they get bail and they're out the same day. And so it's just really terrifying, right? Like that's a very scary feeling to know that this person is very capable of harming you or killing you.
And there's been a lot of conversation, not just in Ontario, but across the country regarding bail reform. And I can only imagine if you are a person that survived a crime and then the person who committed that crime is out on bail.
Yeah.
And we've heard stories of people being out on bail, recommitting crimes against other people.
Right.
What are your thoughts around that?
And we would have survivors who feel both ways. I will tell you that most of the survivors we support would say that they feel like the current system does not go far enough, and they're supportive of bail reform, but not all.
So how do we even begin to dissect what's happening around public safety and the perception of public safety in this country?
I mean, I think the first thing we need to do is house people. like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like you can't really do anything else until your basic needs are met. So many people are committing crimes because their basic needs are not being met and they're trying to survive. And so I think that step one in solving any of this is housing people.
Do you think that the justice system could do a better job of protecting victims?
There's definitely work to be done in order to really listen to victims and to really understand the severity of their fear. So many of our survivors report it to us, but don't report to police. So they're not actually entering the criminal justice system. And I think that's also important to understand and dissect.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think some of them, especially racialized, Indigenous, Black clients feel unsafe accessing the support of the criminal justice system. And, through our partnership with TPS and
The Toronto Police.
Yeah, Toronto Police Service.
Yeah.
So we have 2 crisis lines. One is specific to police. So the police can call us. We go to the scene of the crime with them and support them. We also have a crisis line available to the community, to the public, to call us should they not want police intervention but feel like they're a survivor or victim of crime and crisis.
What do you want the public to know about victims and how we should, the things that we should consider when someone has been victimized?
It's so complicated and nuanced because often survivors and victims are also perpetrators, right? Like it can become murky that it's not just, 2 categories of people. It's hard for us to advocate for one specific direction to change the criminal justice system, for example, because that's just not how all of our survivors feel.
The experience of victims, survivors, and offenders is complex, nuanced, and unique to each situation. Though a constant among them is a hope that the system works for them. What does Polly see when it comes to the conversation around bail reform?
First of all, 2 problems. Are we letting people out when they're healthy enough to be let out? And are we putting them in a situation once they're out where they can be successful? Is it that we are not doing a good job of helping people and reforming them? Or are we not doing a good job of, okay, great, you're pretty stable. Now we put you out in a world that you haven't been in many years, and you have to get a job, you have to feed yourself. We just really need to understand where the system is falling down.
If we don't deal with the underlying issues, then we're delaying the problem.
Jan met up with Professor Kent Roach to get a better understanding of the bail and court system.
I'm Kent Roach, and I'm a professor of criminal law at the University of Toronto.
Take us a step back. What exactly is bail? For someone who has not gone through the court system, what does that actually mean?
Okay, so the criminal code is set up that when a police officer arrests someone or gives someone a summons, there's a default that they should be released so that they never even get to the issue of bail. But if the police officer thinks that the person is not going to show up, or if they're going to go on and commit another crime, they can detain that person. And within 24 hours, they have a right under the charter to go in front of a judge or a justice of the peace to determine whether they will be granted bail. The justice of the peace has to decide, can I ensure that this person will come back to court, will not commit other offenses, and can I maintain confidence in the administration of justice by either releasing this person, usually on conditions, or having them serve, denying them bail. If they're denied bail, they go to jail.
What would a crime that maybe perhaps someone would be considered a candidate for bail, what would that look like?
A pretty standard bail condition would be not only that you have to keep the peace and be of good behavior, but that you not contact the victim, and perhaps that you not contact the witness. So those are some of the bail conditions that can be placed on to try to protect public safety. There's also the idea that you should have probation officers who can enforce bail. So it may be a condition of bail that you meet with this person every week, and that person could then, if he or she suspects that you breached bail, could then send that back to the police.
The last few months. We've seen it on every headline. It just feels like everyone has been on edge. And I'm hoping, can you describe whether or not there is a relationship, but people are making some connection between the bail process and the justice system and maybe what can be done versus what we're seeing play out in society?
What we're seeing coming out of COVID is, think about Toronto, think about how unaffordable housing is in Toronto. So we're seeing both many more visible people living in the TTC, other public spaces, and then we're also seeing these well-publicized horrific acts of violence. I think that it's this kind of combination of unease, frankly, that we all have in seeing people with drug addictions, people who are unhoused, people who are in various forms of distress. And I think that in some ways it's easier to look to solutions in the criminal justice system because you can pass a law and say, good, we've dealt with it. And the other sort of solutions are harder. It's harder to work on housing, it's harder to work on mental health. And, so again, I'm not saying that bail is not part of the reform. The whole justice system and the whole community safety system operates in silos. But I don't think it's necessarily in the best interest that the policing budget is in one silo, the housing budget's in another, the mental health is in another silo.
Overall, the bail process, is it one that you think is fair?
As a person trained in the presumption of innocence, the idea of putting people in jail before they have been found guilty is hard to justify. There are no simple solutions. We all want to be safe. We all want people, I think, to get the help that they need to deal with addictions and other causes of crime. Sometimes denial of bail is going to be necessary, but sometimes it can have a negative effect both on the sentence, but also, even more importantly, on the person's life.
What is the balance between what is fair and what will keep the public safe? Is the system in need of repair? Does incarceration truly lead to rehabilitation?
What does Polly see when it comes to the conversation around rehabilitation?
Among the general population, people are very supportive of rehabilitation. Now, the general population does believe, though, that there's some people who are more worthy or more likely to be rehabilitated than others. So there's a lot of belief and sympathy that if you came from a disadvantaged background, very poor background, or BIPOC, and you just had a rough start in life, or that the cause of your criminality was maybe you were on drugs, but now you can be proven to be clean, it's that you are probably a good candidate for rehabilitation, and there's a lot of support for that. There's a belief that if you stalk and kill children, you are not either a good candidate for rehabilitation or even worthy. People also say, if the system is about rehabilitation, then why do we sentence people to years? Why do we say 25 years you're out or 10 years you're out? Shouldn't it be when you're reformed you're out? And it's up to you to prove that you're reformed. And so it's obviously not about reform, it's about time. It's still about time.
It's basically that if you did the crime, you need to do the time.
Yes. I actually saw a big conversation on the topic of rehabilitation saying people support, they were saying, I support rehabilitation for one main reason, because if we learn how to rehabilitate, maybe we can learn how to prevent.
What is the direction toward a better system? We head to Thunder Bay, joined by Charnel Anderson, and meet community members of Fort William First Nation to learn more.
Our whole purpose of the restoration program is to keep people out of jails.
You need to take responsibility for your actions of what you've done.
Restorative justice. Certainly that is one way to minimize or to alleviate some of the numbers of people who are finding themselves in an incarcerated situation.
The sooner we realize that it should be the main way to assist Indigenous people in the justice system, the better off we'll all be. Bonjour, Gijiba Anamut Kwe, Nindigena Kas, Migazi Nindodem, Anemki Waju Nindoji. I am from Fort William First Nation. My spirit name is Whirlwind Woman, and I'm Migazi or Eagle Clan, and my common name is Selena Reitberger.
How does restorative justice seek to address crime?
When we started up our program at NAN Legal Services, we called it restorative justice because it is restoring the way things used to be in the Indigenous culture. And it also restores relationships. So it addresses crime in a very unique manner in that we are trying to address healing. So it's about trying to restore relationships and also heal the person who has committed the wrong, because we know that there are underlying reasons why this happened. It's not just willfulness.
Why is healing, I guess, at the center of restorative justice?
Well, because we know that if you deal with the underlying issues and you become a well person, we're not going to see you in the justice system anymore.
Why restorative justice? Why not jail or prison?
First of all, you don't want to be an Indigenous person in jail. It's not a good place. We're not about punishment. We're about trying to restore a person. So if you put someone in jail, what did they do in there? They learn how to be a better criminal, but when they get out, they don't have the tools to lead a good life.
I had family and friends that have died in jails and who've gone back and forth, the recidivism aspect of just regular court systems. My spirit name is Jianguanquado, and my other name is Marlene Pierre. I'm with the Thunderbird clan. We don't see justice described as confinement. It's more to put that person in a position where they can recover from their wrong. And whatever that remedy might be, that's determined by the people. We didn't have jails. We didn't need jails. We use all our traditions in some way in the circle.
It's really important that we are looking at ways to address those systems so that they are less discriminatory towards Indigenous people, that don't set Indigenous people up for having to be in conflict with the law. I'm Michelle Solomon, Chief of Fort William First Nation. You certainly have to look at all the historical things that have happened that contribute to the situation that we find ourselves in today. Working on those issues, many people are aware of the issues that contribute to this, such as the residential schools, the child welfare system, the systemic racism that exists in society and in institutions that Indigenous people face every day. Those are all contributing factors to the high rates of incarcerated Indigenous people all over Turtle Island. When people are removed from communities and put into incarcerated systems, that does not give responsibility to the person who has done the harm. That takes away their responsibility because they don't have to answer to the community.
When we're in Circle, we're there to support each other. So my name is Renee Purvis. I'm from Fort William First Nation. I've lived here all my life. I am the Restorative Justice Coordinator / facilitator for the program. When we do a Restorative Justice Circle, we always have an elder. There's always an elder that sits in circle, and the elder co-facilitates with myself. Then we have the individual that has done wrong, and then hopefully we would have the victim, if there is a victim, also participate in the circle. They explain what was going on at the time in their life, how they felt, how they feel now about everything, and what they'd like to see happen. Everybody in the circle gets to talk. Everybody is equal. Nobody is above, nobody is below. We're there to support one another. We come out with suggestions for the individuals. So if an individual says that, there's an issue with addictions, somebody in the circle might recommend to get an assessment done. Somebody might recommend treatment, but we have to come out of that circle with a solid plan.
I'm wondering about the sort of impacts you've seen in the community, because of this restorative justice practice.
As we continue to have circles to address these issues, then it really creates an opportunity for us to talk about larger issues in communities that are beyond, potential wrongdoings or things like that, criminal matters that happen in communities. At the end of the day, it's about restoring relationships. It's restoring people's safety.
I think for a lot of people, we kind of have a story in our minds about people who commit crime, about people who harm others. Maybe restorative justice is demanding for us to maybe ask more questions.
Find out people's stories, build people back up instead of tearing them down. Helping people just feel positive about their life.
Rehabilitate people, maybe?
Hopefully.
What would you say justice looks like?
Justice looks like accountability, reconciliation, restoration of relationships, and healing. I think healing is at the top of the pyramid. Everything should be looking towards how can we help the individuals heal, the victim and the offender.
How do we heal the system toward positive change for all? What is the balance that would allow us to circle back to hope?